Okay. Hello, everyone, and happy Earth Day. I want to thank Root River Jam for the pre-event music. You can hear them at the first outdoor farmers market on May 1st from 9 a.m. to noon. Welcome to Trash Talk, finding the proper place for your waste in Olmsted County, part of our Earth Fest celebration this year. We're excited to have you here with us virtually. Our Earth Fest steering committee and partners have put together a full lineup of virtual events on all topics Earth related. We invite you to visit our brand new website at earthfestrochestermn.org and follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/earthfestrochestermn to sign up for upcoming events. Today's events have been made possible by our sponsors that you've been seeing on the pre-event slideshow, including Fresh Energy, Mayo Clinic, AARP, Conservation Minnesota, Destination Medical Center, Daguna Consulting, Minnesota Public Radio, Sierra Club North Star Chapter, Solar Connection, Christ United Methodist Church, HGA, People's Food Co-op, Rochester Area Foundation, XRG Concepts, and Zumbro Valley Audubon. If you have any technical issues as we move through today's event, please contact me, Megan Gallagher, in the chat or via email, which I've added to the chat as well. Please keep your microphones off until the end when we open it up for questions. You can also submit questions into the chat, which will be monitored throughout the event. You may turn your video on or off as you prefer. This session is being recorded and we will send a link to the recording in the next few days. So let's get started with today's topic, trash talk, which I think we could all use a helpful reminder on what can and can't be put in our recycling bins and curbside trash. So with that, I will hand it over to Anthony Whitmer with Olmsted County.
All right, thank you, Megan. I am going to share my screen here. And before I get started, I got to say thank you so much for everyone attending. I know the weather has been pretty poor the last few days, and we finally have a decent night. So I appreciate you hanging out and talking about garbage and recycling with us. And if you do have a question, please feel free to drop it in the chat, and then we will have time at the end to discuss whatever you want to talk about. And I know a lot of times the conversation naturally drifts into areas of, I've got this in my garage. How do I get rid of this? Or, I read the other day that you can't do this. And we're happy to clear up as much as we can. So I guess without further ado, we'll jump right into it. And covering this first slide, the solid waste hierarchy is an order of best practices that helps, well, really it serves as the foundation for how our operations are set up within Olmsted County's integrated solid waste management system. And most folks are probably familiar with the 3 R's, right? Reduce, reuse, and recycle. Beyond that, we've got composting, waste to energy, and then landfilling at the bottom. And all of these activities are designed to send as little material into the landfill as possible. And our integrated system has facilities and services that match up with each tier on this hierarchy. So first, waste reduction through education. Just a few pictures here. The two on the left are tour groups that we have through the waste energy facility. And before the COVID-19 pandemic, came to be, we used to be able to offer tours through Olmsted Waste Energy Facility and Recycling Center Plus and Hazardous Waste. And we certainly hope to get to that point at some point in the future where we can offer those in-person tours. But for right now, we kind of make do virtually and distantly. So the middle picture there just shows that we try to be out in the community. We want to be accessible, and we want to be transparent with how we're handling our waste. And the picture on the right is just a reminder for me to do kind of a plug for this waste to energy virtual tour that we have available on our website, olmstedwaste.com. And at one point in this presentation, I'm going to jump off the presentation so we can check out our website, because we've got some helpful information out there too. And I just want to state that, for over 20 years, we've had a really good relationship with Quarry Hill Nature Center in town. And they've really helped us out by providing tours to pretty much every sixth grade class in the Rochester School District for years. So it's a really good relationship for both of us. Just a photo here, picture on the left is our Arbor Day, well, not our Arbor Day, it's Rochester Public Utilities Arbor Day in the park. And we certainly miss being able to interact with the community at that. It was canceled last year and unfortunately canceled again this year, but we hope to get back to that hopefully in 2022. And then a picture on the right is a booth at the Olmsted County Fair, and fingers crossed that we'll be able to have some sort of presence at the county fair this year. The Waste Wizard still talking about education. This is the first time that I'm going to jump off the presentation because I want to demonstrate this. So for folks who may have questions about what they can dispose of, we have a handy tool called the Waste Wizard, and it serves as a one-stop hub for over 500 different types of items. So this is where you would go, or where we would recommend first going if you have questions on how do I get rid of paint. And it's got some predictive search in there. So you start typing in paint, you can choose from oil-based or latex-based, paint thinner, paint stripper, and it'll tell you that you can bring paint to the Olmsted County Hazardous Waste Facility from Tuesday through Saturday from 8 to 4:30, and there's no charge. So you can kind of play around with that at your own leisure, but it's really a handy tool for finding that proper place for your waste in Olmsted County. And that does bring us to our first permanent facility, the Hazardous Waste Facility. And with the potential to be especially harmful to people and the environment, we want to make sure that we are getting these poisonous, flammable, corrosive products out of the waste stream, because these are products that we do not want ending up in your household garbage or your household recycling, because they can be hazardous, as the name implies. So we get a lot of paint, stains, varnishes, rechargeable batteries. I'm going to probably touch on this twice. Rechargeable batteries, and specifically lithium ion batteries, are particularly problematic for the waste industry because of their tendency to catch on fire if they're damaged. And nationwide or industry-wide, I think it's about $1 billion that rechargeable batteries cost the waste industry, either in terms of damage from fires or disrupting operations or mitigating technologies, fire control technology that is in place at materials recovery facilities. So it's a big problem, but that's why we want to hit home that idea of that proper place for waste. A picture here inside the reuse center at the hazardous waste facility. Approximately 40% of the materials that get brought to the hazardous waste facility still have life left in them, and they're put on the shelves in the reuse center. So anything that you'd find in the reuse center is free for the taking. You're probably not going to find enough of one color to paint your whole living room, but for smaller projects it might be just the ticket. And like I said, there's no cost to it. And we've gotten some positive feedback, at least in the schools. We've heard that drama clubs or theater productions will use this to paint sets. I was at an elementary school. This was when we were still doing in-person tours, and the teacher said that him and his son will grab paint to do birdhouse and craft projects, things like that. So it's just a good opportunity to use up the product for its intended purpose before even disposing of it. Moving down that hierarchy, this brings us to the recycling tier, and this is the Olmsted County Recycling Center Plus. This is going to serve as a one-stop drop-off for a variety of recyclables as well as garbage. Some images of what we do accept: aluminum cans, clear glass bottles and jars, colored glass bottles and jars, clean corrugated cardboard, paper products, plastics 1, 2s with a neck, and then we say clean number 5 dairy containers. So that's going to be your yogurt tubs, cottage cheese containers, margarine tubs, Cool-Whip containers, things like that. Tin and steel food cans, so soup cans, and then scrap metal. That roll-off bin is on the back side, but we also take that as well. And actually, this is another opportunity that I'm going to take to jump off the presentation and highlight our curbside recycling cart guide. And this is a good point to distinguish between the recyclables that you put at the curb versus the ones that you might bring to the Recycling Center Plus. So the vast majority of residents in Olmsted County have a curbside waste hauler. And this is the information that's going to apply to, what you can put, or at least the main items of what you can put in your curbside recycling cart and, what you should not. And the items that you put in that cart are not going to get brought to the recycling center. Plus, they're actually going to get brought to a local transfer station that'll get put onto a truck and likely brought up to a big sorting facility in the Twin Cities, which are referred to as materials recovery facilities. And if I'm doing okay on time here, I'm going to try to play a video of what one of these, whoops, am I still sharing? I think I might have hit something.
No, you're not sharing anymore.
I'm not, okay, sorry, I hit the wrong tab. I'm gonna do that again. There we go. Thanks you. So this video is of DEMCON Materials Recovery Facility, which is located in Shakopee, Minnesota. And I like to play this just because it does a really good job at depicting how these materials get sorted out. And I'm going to pause it at one point to talk about why certain items should not be in the recycling cart.
A lot of people don't know this, but the best way to make money with Amazon in 2021 is not
by ad.
All right, how many of you recycle at home? You ever wonder what happens to the stuff you recycle? Years ago, almost everything we threw away ended up right here in the landfill. Whoa! Today, thanks to recycling, we're keeping more and more of this stuff out of the landfill and turning it back into something useful instead. Oh, how many of you use one of these at home or at school? With single-stream recycling, you can fill this up with all of your recyclables. And here at DEMCON's Materials Recovery Facility, we'll sort through it and figure out what to do with everything. It's a big job, but with the help of some special equipment, we can process over 20 tons of recyclables every hour. You want to see how we do it? Not everything you throw away can be recycled. Some materials are just really hard to turn back into new products. Luckily, about 75% of the stuff we throw away can be recycled. Most of these recyclables fall into one of four categories: fibers, metals, plastics, and glass. Let's take a journey through our recycling facility and find out how DEMCON deals with each type of material. Fibers is what we call things made from paper and cardboard. Everything from juice boxes to magazines to grocery bags, because they're all made up of tiny plant fibers. See? This is a great recyclable material because we can take old paper and cardboard and turn it into new paper and cardboard again and again. The recovery process for recyclables starts here on the tipping floor, where trucks drop off mixed recyclables for us to process. These recyclables come from all over the Twin Cities area and beyond. All day long, our loaders scoop up the recyclables into our recovery system, and they're on their way to a new life. When it comes to separating cardboard out from the rest of the waste, the old corrugated cardboard screen helps us get the job done fast. This machine is filled with a bed of spinning discs that carries cardboard across while letting other...
I like to pause the video right here just to emphasize why certain items don't go in the recycling cart. So specifically here, tanglers is kind of a general category that we use to discuss items like holiday lights, extension cords, ropes, garden hoses, anything with that capacity to tangle an item can obviously be problematic here. Plastic bags, grocery bags is another big one that requires materials recovery facilities like these to shut down their operations for an hour a day just to go out there and remove plastic bags. So a good reminder there. And also, just because we usually get the question about keeping caps on plastic bottles. When you keep the cap on a plastic bottle, it helps that bottle retain its three-dimensional shape and fall through the necessary screens at these materials recovery facilities. Without the cap, I mean, it still, can fall through oftentimes, but without the cap, it's more likely to get squished and behave as a two-dimensional, fiber product and potentially ride up over these sorting screens. So just a couple of points to make there.
Other kinds of recyclables fall through. Hey, look, there goes our little red box. Our old newsprint screen uses spinning rubber stars that separate a different kind of fiber from the waste stream. Newsprint. This is an important type of fiber that can be turned into brand new magazines and newspapers. Sometimes our machines get a little help from sharp-eyed workers who sort through the recyclables as they flow by on a conveyor. Here in the fiber cabin, we make sure that all the different kinds of fibers end up in the right place, like our little friend here. Hey, where'd you go? The fiber baler squeezes different kinds of fiber into bales and binds them up tight with wire. These bales can be transported to a paper mill, where they'll be turned into brand new paper and cardboard. See you later, fiber. Metal is used to make all kinds of things, from bicycles to bridges. The metal we collect here at DEMCON is very valuable because it can be melted down and recycled into useful new products. Our powerful magnetic separator rips steel cans and other metal recyclables right out of the stream. That's one powerful magnet. Did you know that some metals aren't magnetic? Aluminum, for example. For things like cans that you can't grab with a magnet, DEMCON uses this high-tech machine called the eddy current separator. It creates a powerful electromagnetic field that causes aluminum to jump right out of the waste. Pretty cool, huh? Whee! The container baler compresses the sorted metal into bales that can be stacked for easy storage. These bales can be melted down and turned into shiny new products by manufacturers all over the world. Just don't try to move one by yourself. This bale of aluminum cans weighs more than 1,000 pounds. Oh, over here. I think we found it. Cheese. Did you know Americans use 2.5 million plastic bottles every hour? That's why it's so important to make sure that we're recycling as much of this plastic as possible. Not all plastic is the same though, so to make sure that it can be recovered properly, we need to do some extra sorting. Fortunately, DEMCON has a piece of amazing equipment that makes this process a lot easier. This is the optical sorter. Using an infrared camera connected to a super fast computer, it's able to figure out what kind of plastic container is passing by and blast it onto a separate conveyor with a jet of air. It's so fast it can sort up to 6 tons of plastic bottles every hour. That's a lot better than letting it sit around in a landfill. Oh, here it is. Right again. Glass objects are all around us, and they are very important recyclable because glass can be melted down and reused over and over again without losing any quality. This keeps glass out of the landfill and saves a lot of energy. You hear that? That's the sound of our glass breaker screen smashing up the jars, bottles, and other glass containers that end up inside of it. Uh-oh. We drop the glass fragments into this big bay. From here, it'll be sent to another facility that uses special equipment to separate the pieces by color and size so they can be melted down and turned into new glass. And the process starts all over again.
So that covers the main points, but I think it's really important to show that to people, because for a lot of people, once garbage is out of sight, it's out of mind. And it's just good to know that it has to go somewhere. And if I can just jump back to our recycling cart guide, I should highlight again, just as important as what we're putting in the recycling cart is what we should not be putting in the recycling cart. Plastic bags, we talked about that. I made a note earlier to talk about the lithium ion batteries. Those should not be going in your garbage or recycling cart. Single-use alkaline batteries can go in the trash. We get a lot of questions about that, but single-use alkaline can go in the trash. Other than that, we usually say if it's rechargeable, bring it to the hazardous waste facility. We talked about tanglers, electronic devices can be recycled, but you got to bring them to a facility like the Olmsted County Recycling Center Plus. Shredded paper, we get a lot of questions on. You can see that shredded, or you can, I guess, picture how shredded paper would just make a mess as it goes onto the conveyor. There's not a real good way to sort out shredded paper. So if you want to get rid of it, you can just bag it up with your household garbage. If you happen to be going down to the Recycling Center Plus, you're welcome to bring it to us. If it's clean, whites, if it's shredded, clean white office paper, you can put that in with the white office, 8.5 by 11 sheets. We bale things sort of separated at the Recycling Center Plus so we can handle that. Food waste is a big contaminant. Typically our motto with that is we want recyclables to be clean, dry, and empty. And then no foam packaging. And a special reminder, if you have big corrugated cardboard boxes, to remove that foam packaging before you try to recycle it. I'm going to jump back to the presentation here. So we talked about the curbside drop off. Again, this is going to be the self-haul option for folks who do not have a curbside recycling hauler. The Recycling Center Plus also takes a variety of other items that would have a fee. Everything from couches to computers, tires to TVs is sort of a one-stop drop-off for materials. Household garbage is charged a fee per volume. So essentially, the more you throw away, the more you're going to pay. So $5 per 30 gallons of garbage. If you've ever been out to the Recycling Center Plus, you probably are familiar with these bins. This is where they would direct you depending on what you bring into the facility. And burn just means it's going to go to the waste energy facility. Non-burn means it has to have an extra level of processing. So I was talking with our recycling specialist just yesterday for a few examples of what might be directed. That's going to be things like pressure washers or really long, boards of lumber that need to be shredded first before processing. In the back there, we've got bins for scrap aluminum, scrap steel as well. So we already kind of touched on the recycling cart guide when I was on the website. Again, this is available. Go to olmstedwaste.com, click on our tab, garbage and recycling, or go out to our Facebook page. This is one of our more recent posts. You just do a search for Olmsted County Environmental Resources. You can find that. Some disposal tips. Really important to remember, garbage should always be bagged and recyclables should always be loose. And I'm sure we've all seen garbages on the side of the road that have garbage piled up, well beyond the capacity of the container. That's ultimately going to be up to the hauler for what they decide to collect. But with garbage just kind of sitting at the top, if it's not bagged and the lid is propped open, it's more likely to get blown around and create litter, and we want to avoid that. And just by the nature of the way recyclables are sorted, we always want those to be loose. And just one more note too, when you go to recycle it, don't put objects inside of other objects, right? So, don't put your aluminum can inside your steel soup can, and don't put your paperboard items inside your corrugated cardboard boxes, because the materials are just a little bit different, and they're going to go to different end markets, so they should be loose. A photo here from DEMCON, courtesy of DEMCON. This shows you the degree of contamination that MRFs encounter on a daily basis, and the vast majority of these are plastic bags that get thrown in the recycling bin. And whether they got there because people didn't know better, or they thought they were doing the right thing, because oftentimes you will see the quote unquote recycling symbol, or what people refer to as the cycling symbol, but that that number for plastics is actually just a resin identification number. So that represents what type of resin that comprises that plastic. If you want to recycle plastic bags, bring them back to the grocery store in which you got them, or big box retailer, whatever that may be. But yeah, I think we heard from them. I think it's about an hour a day that they have to shut down operations just to pull all this junk out of their sorting screens. As we move down the hierarchy, we've talked about reducing waste, reusing it, recycling it. This brings us to the Olmsted County compost site. Primarily going to be leaves and grass clippings that are brought to this site. There are some other forms of garden waste that can be brought, but the process starts when residents drop it off at the large pile. Our staff operator will then scoop up those leaves and grass clippings into the front end loader, and he will dump that out into these long windrows of decomposing organic matter. And we will use our Scarab machine, that's just the brand name, it's a windrow turner, that will go down the piles and mix it together. And what that's doing is helping to create more of a uniform composition of moisture and oxygen, so that those naturally occurring microbes are in a suitable environment for effective decomposition. And these piles do get fairly hot. I believe I was talking with our site manager, who says that, when they put in the temperature probe, they're up to 160 degrees Fahrenheit. So certainly hot enough to kill weed seeds. After an appropriate amount of time has passed during the composting season, which runs from April through about October, we can turn unfinished yard waste into finished compost in about 90 days with the right conditions, maybe even faster. But before we make this compost available to the folks at the site, we run it through a trommel screen, and that just helps to kick off big sticks or rocks or any undesirable, large items that may have found their way in there. And I got just a quick video. I'm going to play of that. So as the compost makes its way through the trommel screen, you'll see that there's a reject pile that goes off the right side of the conveyor, leaving the screened finished compost to go off of the end of the conveyor. And excuse me, that's what we make available to the public. And it's available on a self-serve basis for a donation fee is what we suggest. There's a suggested donation fee. We say about 50 cents per 5-gallon bucket, $5 per carload, $20 for a trailer load. So we found that it is an excellent soil amendment. I was giving a presentation earlier in the week where I had a lot of great feedback on people saying that they mix it, or they top dress their gardens with it. And we hear a lot of good things about it. So that is available. Again, moving down the hierarchy, we've talked about waste reduction, reuse, recycling, composting. This brings us to the waste energy facility. So initially opened in 1987 with a capacity of 200 tons of garbage per day. A third boiler was added in 2010 to essentially double the capacity to 400 tons of garbage per day. All garbage in Olmsted County and Dodge County is brought to this facility to be utilized as a fuel source to generate steam and electricity. It reduces the amount of waste we send to a landfill by about 90%. So you can think for every 10 garbage trucks that come through the facility, we've got about one roll-off container of ash going out to the Kalmar Landfill. And we also this facility is also connected to about 25 buildings on the Olmsted County District Energy System, providing a combination of steam or electricity. A relatively new upgrade at our facility is this process flow of the waste energy facility. We had an original copy of this that was drawn by one of the nuns from Assisi Heights that was up at the facility for quite a few years, and it was just time to give it a fresh look. But you can see we're using garbage as a fuel source to heat water, to generate steam, to run through turbine generators to create electricity, and that steam is also used to heat and cool buildings on the district energy system. The process starts when garbage is weighed in at the scale house. Garbage is charged a fee per ton in Olmsted County. So trucks will weigh in with a full load, and then they'll weigh out on the other side after they've dumped their load into the pit. The pit has a capacity of about 2,000 tons, so it can get very full in there. As we see here with a view out of the control room, in the operator's chair, they're going to use that claw to mix the garbage and then eventually drop it into a hopper, which will gravity feed it into one of the combustion chambers. With temperatures reaching up to 1,800 degrees Fahrenheit, it's a very efficient burn. So it's not like, it's not like a backyard burn bin or having a campfire and throwing some stuff in there. This is a very efficient burn. It's constantly monitored. The facility runs 24/7 with staff operating the facility. Just some shots here in the control room. I'm going to touch on emissions monitoring in just a moment here, but this is also a good time to talk about the waste sort that we do every 5 years. We contract with a company based out of Winona to literally audit the types of waste that end up in our garbage. And they've got all these different types of categories. And if I recall correctly, they were here last back in May of 2019, and they will sort the garbage, pick through it, and categorize it. And you can think they encounter everything, right? So I was talking to this group, and they're really a great bunch. I think they're family members, if I recall correctly. And I was talking to the gentleman in the front left here with the yellow hard hat, and I just asked if he had any unique stories, and he kind of just said you got to have a strong stomach to do this, because everything from the kitchen scraps that you throw in there to children's diapers is going to end up into the garbage, and they sort through it. So also they had a lot of other fun stories too. I mean, they've been all over the United States. They've been flown out to Hawaii to do waste sorts. So kind of a unique and lucrative occupation. And that gives us really helpful information. So this is just a 10-year comparison from the 2009 waste sort to the 2019 waste sort. I'm not sure if all these figures are coming through on everyone's screens or not, but a notable one is we've seen a continued rise of organics in the waste stream. Plastics by weight are down a little bit, and that doesn't mean we have less plastics out there, but because this waste sort is by tonnage or weight, the plastics are slightly less, and that relates to something that we call the evolving ton. So the waste stream is constantly evolving, and if you think of baby food as a simple example, 30 years ago baby food came in glass jars. Well, these days almost everything comes in flexible packaging, and it's a continued effort to lightweight the materials. That reduces costs for transportation, as well as the feedstock required to make new bottles and things like that. So it is just an interesting benchmark that we're able to obtain every 5 years. I want to touch briefly too on the emissions monitoring that the waste energy facility does. So waste to energy is some of the most regulated technology out there with regards to energy production. The Minnesota Pollution Control Agency sets very strict permit limits on what can be emitted from the facility. And I just want to clarify, these blue rectangular columns represent our permit limits, and the orange vertical columns, which are quite flat, represent test results for various parameters that we measure. And then these just represent the different units. So unit 1, unit 2, unit 3, as I said, was installed or came online in 2010, was subject to even tighter regulations. So that's why that permit limit is even lower. But you can see for hydrogen chloride, we're nowhere near the permit limit. Sulfur dioxide still well within permit limits. Nitrogen oxides within permit limits, a little bit closer to the permit limit on unit 3, but still within that. And then as we look at these heavy metals like mercury, lead, and cadmium, we are nowhere near the permit limits. And that's a testament to a variety of things, right? So a big one is we have this integrated system. So we have this outlet for people to be throwing lead acid, or not throwing. We have this outlet at the Olmsted County Hazardous Waste Facility to be bringing lead acid batteries. and nickel cadmium batteries, so it's not ending up in the garbage. It's also a testament to the very robust pollution control equipment that is in place at the waste energy facility to mitigate and minimize our impact in the most efficient way possible. As we near, I'm looking at the time here, I think I'm still doing okay on time. We've talked about the 3 R's: composting, waste to energy, and this brings us to the very bottom of the hierarchy with landfilling. Before we talk about landfilling, we need to talk about the geologic formation that's right under our feet in Olmsted County and much of southeastern Minnesota, referred to as karst. And karst is characterized by fissures and cracks in underlying bedrock, which allows anything at the surface to basically make its way into underlying aquifers very quickly. So as you can imagine, as we look at this map of southeastern Minnesota, and we look at Olmsted County, more closely Olmsted County, we find that we really only have one good spot in the county where we have naturally occurring clay, which is a very impermeable material, and that allows us to site a landfill there. We do not have a lot of space. These lighter colors represent sensitivity to groundwater. So again, this dark green color we're seeing on the map represents a suitable place for a landfill. The landfill accepts 3 types of waste, primarily ash from the Olmsted Waste to Energy facility. There's a municipal solid waste or garbage cell out at the landfill. And I took this picture at the end of the day, so they're just putting a cover on that so it doesn't blow around at night. If they happen to be doing maintenance on the waste energy facility, haulers can bypass out to the landfill, and this is where they would dump it. There's also a demolition cell. I like to point out the environmental protection measures that are in place underneath the ash cell and the garbage cell. So in addition to being built upon 30 to 100 feet of naturally occurring clay, the ash cell, which was essentially built to hazardous waste specifications, has 3 feet of compacted clay, a high density polyethylene plastic liner, another 2.5 feet of clay, another plastic liner. Over with the garbage cell, again, the naturally occurring clay, the 4 feet of compacted clay with the high density plastic liner. And then both of these cells will have leachate collection. And this is what leachate is. It's essentially rainwater that falls onto the cells out at the landfill and collects in a catchment system underneath the cells, the landfill cells. And that gets pumped out and brought to the water reclamation plant in Rochester. And you can see that while you certainly wouldn't want to drink the leachate from the ash monofill, it's much more uniform than what you would see from the garbage cell. And I mean, as you can imagine, like we talked about with the waste sort, anything you throw in the garbage is going to make its way to the cell, again, if they're bypassing. But that gets pumped out, brought to the water reclamation plant. And then this is my last slide with content. Before ash is making its final resting place, we sift through it with a giant magnet on the front end of an excavator to pull out any iron, ferrous metals. That does 2 things for us. We're able to recoup some money for the value of the scrap iron. And it also saves landfill space, which is quite valuable to us as well. So here's my actual last slide, and we'll open it up for questions after this, but you're welcome to visit our website, again, olmstedwaste.com, or if you just want to do a Google search, Olmsted County Garbage and Recycling, it'll bring you to the same spot. Our general phone number, 507-328-7070, or you can send us an email at pwservice@co.olmsted.mn.us. And one final plug, go ahead and check out, I'm going to exit the presentation mode here. Check out our Facebook page. This is my shameless plug, right? Follow us on Facebook. Like us, we usually put up some helpful tips on, waste and recycling. Here we've got the link to our virtual tour. So just a lot of resources available through social media. So that's kind of what I have, and I'm happy to answer any questions that may be out there. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen here.
There are multiple questions in the chat, and I will work my way through them. I'll just fire them at you. Someone said, I have put shredded office paper in a paper bag taped shut with masking tape. Is this not a good idea?
Good question. It's one that I've actually answered a couple times in the last few weeks. So that had been a method for disposing of shredded office paper in the curbside recycling cart. You might still find language at some for some MRFs or some haulers up in the Twin Cities. I can't say for certain on that, but the message by and large now across the state of Minnesota is to just either throw shredded paper in your garbage, or if you have a local outlet like our Recycling Center Plus, you could bring it there to recycle. Again, I'll caution, we wouldn't want you to make a special trip down to the recycling center just for a small amount of shredded paper, but if you happen to be making your way to that part of town, that's certainly an option too. And if you recall from the video that we watched, shredded paper is just going to make a mess, and it often ends up with the glass because the glass is going to break and it's going to turn into little shards about the size of shredded paper, and it's really problematic to separate the shredded paper from the glass then. So great question.
If something has a 1, 2, or 5 but is not a bottle, can it be recycled?
It's a good question too. And it's going to depend on whether you self-haul to the Recycling Center Plus or have a curbside hauler. So examples of number ones that would be not bottles, but recyclable would be like produce containers, fruit containers. You go to the bakery at a grocery store and you get a donut or some donut holes in there. That is certainly recyclable in your cart. You got to make sure that you're checking that it actually has a 1, because it's basically impossible to tell the difference between a number 1 clamshell material and a number 6, which would be polystyrene, building block for styrofoam. And myself, I can't tell the difference, so I always have to look at it. So if it's a number 1, that would be fine. Here I've got a number 2.
To clarify, that's fine in the curbside recycling. But can people
Correct.
bring a fruit container with a number 1 to the self drop off?
Yes, thank you for making that distinction, Megan. At this point, no, we're not asking for that. That is more so just to reduce any potential contamination from 6s that might be sort of, impostering or masquerading as number 1s. I don't want to say that we'll never take it at the Recycling Center Plus, but at this point, we do say 1s and 2s with a neck for the folks who self-haul to the recycling center. And in addition to the number 1s, I actually have a number 2 that would not have a neck per se. Your standard coffee grounds container. This would be recyclable in your curbside cart. Number 5s are going to be your yogurt tubs, margarine containers, things like that, cool-up containers. Those don't have necks. Those are fine. What we don't want to see, and this is where recycling, and especially plastics, gets complicated, is most plastics, regardless of what they are going to have that resin identification symbol, and it's the chasing arrow symbol, and most people would refer to that as the recycling symbol. Unfortunately, it is just that. It's a resin identification symbol that acknowledges what type of material that product is made from. So 3s would be like a PVC pipe, not recyclable. 4s would be low density polyethylene, LDPE. Most of the time, not recyclable. You might find some plastic bags that are made out of number 4s. 6s are going to be polystyrene, and that's going to range everything from number 6 clamshell containers to red Solo cups, things like that. And then 7 is just a category called other, so it can be a combination of various resins. So again, 1s, 2s, and 5s at the curb. Good question.
Okay. Why can't we bring tag board to the recycling center, but yet we can bring it to the curbside, yet we can put it in curbside bins?
Yep, another good question. We get this one a lot. So We don't accept paperboard at the recycling center plus. So paperboard being, cereal boxes, Kleenex boxes.
Is
cracker
that any
boxes.
non-corrugated cardboard?
Exactly. Yep. So we only take corrugated cardboard for a couple of reasons. One, we don't have the space to be able to store big bales of the paperboard by itself. And our end market for corrugated cardboard views paperboard as a contaminant. And I can't remember if I touched on this, or I had a number of presentations this week, so they're kind of running together. So forgive me if I've touched on this twice, but each time you recycle any product made out of paper, the tiny little plant fibers or cellulose fibers shorten and get a little bit weaker. So the paper fibers in a brand new corrugated cardboard are structurally stronger and have higher value than, say, a cereal box. And that's just why our end market doesn't want it. And you can recycle a cereal box. It's just we don't have the market for that at the recycling center. And the cereal box might get downcycled into something like an egg carton or a paper towel. But at some point, fibers reach an end of the road. And we did a Facebook post about this. Or maybe I haven't. I think I have this in the hopper to go out sometime in the next week or so. But egg cartons and like drink containers that you'd get going through the drive-through of a fast food, those are made from paper fibers, but they're basically at the end of the point where they don't add any value to the recycling stream. So you're not going to use the short, weak fiber content in an egg carton to add structural integrity to a new Amazon box. So egg cartons and drink containers can go in your garbage. And you can see that. Yeah.
To answer this person's question, they're asking why can you put one thing in the curbside bin but not the recycling center? I think you touched on that the curbside bins typically go to the Twin Cities for a recycling center, a different type of recycling center than the one that's in Olmsted County. So that's kind of why you can put certain things in the curbside but not bring to Olmsted County.
Yeah, and I apologize if I wasn't clear on that, but yes, everything in the curb is going to go out of county to a big sorting facility where they're going to receive that material in a quantity that allows them to market it, and we just don't have the space at this point. So essentially, at the Recycling Center Plus, we're sacrificing a lower quality and lower quantity material for the continued recycling of a higher quality, higher value product, being the corrugated cardboard. Good question.
Sure. Does shredded office paper we bring to the recycling center have to be white?
Yes. Yep. We do have a bin for colored paper, and that's going to be anything from newspapers to magazines to to like glossy pamphlets, things like that. We would maybe call that other paper, but yes, if we're getting shredded paper at the Recycling Center Plus, we want it to come from sorted white office paper, those 8.5 by 11 copy sheet type papers. So.
Sure. Are milk cartons with plastic caps okay to recycle?
Yes, at the curb, not at the Recycling Center Plus. And yeah, so milk and juice cartons are kind of the two items that don't really jive between the curbside and the self-haul Recycling Center Plus. But yes, the carton, the milk cartons with the plastic tops, or the juice cartons with the plastic gable top, are recyclable in the curb. And actually, I'm going to share my screen again and just have our curbside recycling cart guide up, just for familiarity.
Yeah, so plastic bottles and that kind of thing, like water bottles, you can leave the cap on either way, but the cartons and the jugs, you only need to remove the cap if you're bringing it to the drop-off site. Correct?
Yeah, yep. So that's another kind of subtle difference too, is we don't want caps on the materials on the bottles at the Recycling Center Plus, because we bale that ourselves. And when we don't have the cap on it, it helps us to get a denser bale, and we can fit more product.
So no caps in general at the self drop-off. The caps should be thrown away?
Yes. Yep. Yeah, Or if it's a glass jar, let's say you've got a salsa jar that has a metal top, you know, and you self-haul to the recycling center. Plus, you could put that metal in. To my knowledge, I guess I should probably check with our waste abatement manager. But to my recollection, he said that the metal lids can go in the, where you would put like your soup cans, things like that. So until I hear otherwise, that'd be the message. But yes, cap on at the curb.
Okay, is it preferred to remove paper from tin cans prior to recycling?
You don't have to do that, and I should probably get a new picture just for the purposes of not infringing on copyright or trademarks. I have just a generic tin can on here, but I don't mean to imply, or we don't mean to imply, that you have to remove the paper label. So that can stay on. What we really want to make sure is that, if you have a soup can, that you're emptying out all the contents. So, no, if you got a chunky soup can, no peas and potatoes left in there. Give it a quick rinse. And
while you're on that, things that aren't a quick rinse, like peanut butter. Do you bother cleaning a peanut butter jar out really well? Like, how clean do items need to be for recycling?
That's a very good question, and it's a very tough question for us to answer, because at some point there's a degree of subjectivity that goes into these decisions. My cop-out answer for that one is I give the peanut butter jar to my dog, and she licks it clean before I recycle it. Now, that's obviously not, the official answer, but it's kind of a judgment call. So you can kind of scrape it around with a knife to remove as much content. If you're in doubt about it, just throw it in the garbage, right? I mean, we don't want to risk contaminating good recyclables with bad recyclables. So there's another one is pizza boxes. We get lots of questions about pizza boxes, and how, like, a perfectly clean pizza box is perfectly recyclable, at least at the curb. But the problem is, most of the time they're not perfectly clean. They're soiled with grease or cheese, and that's not desirable for the end market for cardboard. And it's also problematic because then it messes up other material in the bin that happens to come in contact with it, and it attracts vermin and other things. It's just not good in general. So I don't have like a good ratio. Make sure for every square inch of peanut butter, unfortunately I don't have anything like that. So the message is usually, and here's a good example of what's passable, and I got this from actually the DEMCON materials recovery facility. I used the example of a soup can, right? If there's a little like soup residue on the side of the can, that's not a big deal, right? But if you've got like ½ inch of soup pooled up in the bottom, and there's potatoes and peas and carrots in the bottom, that's obviously not desirable, and we want to get that cleaned up. So clean, dry, and empty is the message that we kind of continue to hit home with that.
Sure. Should we remove the sticky rubber-like material that is used to seal ads that we get in the mail?
The sticky rubber. I'm sorry. I'm trying to picture.
It's like the glue, but it's almost like a tacky, like clear. I know what they're talking about. That like sticks to mailers and stuff, or even like on packaging certain things. If you peel something off, it has that little like sticky kind of clear material.
Okay, so I have not heard about that being a problem at this point. So I'm going to assume you don't have to remove that. A similar level of contamination would be like the little plastic window on an envelope. You don't have to punch that out if you decide to. You're only helping it, but like that little plastic window would be fine. So I'm going to assume that little sticky is probably fine. If you want to be absolutely sure, because to be completely honest, I'm not absolutely sure on that. I think it's fine. You could just rip it off and throw it out. So
I was going to ask about that clear label on the mail, so that's good. Okay.
Yep.
Does construction waste go to the facility as well? A contractor told me his construction dumpster wouldn't go to the facility. So what about construction waste?
So Depends. We do have a construction and demolition cell out at the Kalmar landfill. So potentially, and if folks have smaller demolition products or projects, let's say you're remodeling your bathroom and you got to get rid of a toilet or something like that, you could bring that to the recycling center plus, and that will get brought out to the demolition cell. There are out of county landfills that do accept specifically demolition material. So all garbage in Olmsted County is municipal solid waste, household garbage is required to come to the Olmsted Waste Energy Facility. To my recollection, I'm quite fairly certain of this, demolition material can go out of county. And I think there's some managers from the ER department who could correct me if I was wrong on that, but I believe pretty sure that's the case. So possibly it could come to us, or depending on who their contractor is, where they take it, it might go somewhere else.
It just varies so much. I'm renovating my house right now, and there's sheetrock, which is one material, but then there's like nails and screws, which is a whole nother type of material. So I guess it really depends on what construction material it would be. So that's, I'm sure, harder to answer. But I would think they wouldn't want nails and screws going to the waste incinerator, so they wouldn't want that in the curbside garbage.
No, we don't want construction and demolition material in garbage. And I think, hold on, as I have the website at my disposal here. Yes, I'm going to share my screen again. So we do have some roll-off container guides on our disposal options page on our website, where we just have a listing of the licensed waste haulers that you folks are welcome to contact. And then we do distinguish between garbage roll-off containers and construction and demolition roll-off containers. So this could be something that folks could differentiate or help to differentiate between items. So if that helps.
Yeah, I think so. How did they get to that page on the website?
I'm going to go back. If you were to go to olmstedwaste.com, it will take you directly to our residential garbage and recycling page. And if you just do like a Google search of Olmsted County garbage and recycling, it'll also take you here. I went to the disposal options tab. And then that's how I navigated down to the roll-off container guides.
Okay.
But again, too, we have our waste wizard that I want to do another shout out for if you've got different types of materials. So, yeah.
I think you touched on this a little bit, possibly with mentioning that the ash from the waste incinerator can be brought to the landfill. But someone said, does burning trash have a lessened environmental impact than a landfill? I imagine the air quality is affected.
So that's a really good question, and one that I will be completely honest, I'm probably not the best person to try to answer the difference between the net environmental impact of a facility with waste energy versus one that's strictly landfill. What I can tell you is we live in a community that has very limited landfill space. So we've always had this motto of handling waste in our own backyard. If our garbage were to go out of county, and let's say it would go to a landfill that would be found in violation of environmental standards, they can go back to the generators of that waste in lawsuits, and that would be you, me, that'd be anyone who throws things away. So we do everything we can to save the landfill space. And I know we've got a graph at our waste energy facility that if we did not have waste energy technology in Olmsted County, we would have filled up our existing landfill 3 times over by now. And I think we're approaching the mark about 4 times over. And then
in terms of air quality though, I think I have heard that the waste incinerator, it does a pretty good job of not releasing a ton of bad emissions. Do you know anything about?
Yeah, and I think that's a good point. And let me jump back to the presentation. about that. And so, again, emissions control is something we take very seriously. And on top of that, it's just extremely tightly regulated. So again, the blue charts, and I put these out mainly for a comparison of the top of the chart. Let's get this to the current slide for, let's say, hydrogen chloride of 250 parts per million by volume, is the permit limit that for units 1 and 2 that the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency deems as acceptable. It's tighter on unit 3, and we're at 1.05, 0.95, 1.42. So yes, without having the expertise of some of our staff in regulatory compliance, that's about as far as I usually like to go without trying to blow smoke or pretend that I know more about the chemistry of various pollutants. But I do know that we take it seriously. We work very hard to have less than permit limits, well below permit limits for emissions.
Okay, we have lots of questions left, so I'll keep trying to fire these at you. Are catalogs, magazines, glossy paper recyclable?
Yes, in your curbside cart, and you could bring those items to the colored paper bin at the Recycling Center Plus if you self-haul too.
Okay. Hastings, Minnesota has an organics, including food scraps, paper towels, etc., drop off for residents. Is there something like that in Rochester? Someone did respond to that saying that it costs money, but there's a farm that will pick up your food scraps at your house for compost. Works well if you don't have a yard like an apartment to compost yourself.
Okay, so right now we don't have a public site to be able to drop off organics, and this is a question that we're continuing to see more and more of. There's currently a moratorium on all things related to organics and organics hauling that my supervisor is directly part of. So at the moment, no, there is not a place to bring food scraps or things like that. And again, the yard waste compost site is permitted just for yard waste. So if you don't have like a backyard compost bin or something like that, the garbage is really going to be the only other alternative at this point. We have received, again, this question many times. We are open to the idea of, at this point, and it's something that staff is currently working on. And there are local commercial organization or businesses or organizations that are looking into that type of service. So without putting the cart before the horse too much, that's about all I can say. Is it's currently in the process.
So I have a backyard compost. If after it is decomposed, am I able to bring that to the compost site, or I still shouldn't?
Well, I would say after it's decomposed, throw it on your lawn or use it in a garden box.
I guess just if people don't have gardens or anything, they have a bunch of it that they don't know what to do with. Could they drop that off in the compost?
So that's actually the first time I've ever been asked about people bringing finished compost to be disposed of at the compost site. I would say we're not really seeking that out. If you have the space for a backyard compost bin and you've got finished compost and you don't have a garden to mix it in, I would just say top dress it onto your lawn and add some organic matter back to your lawn.
Sure. Does clear packing tape have to be removed from cardboard shipping boxes before placing in the bin?
Nope, it does not. And if you happen to remove the clear packing tape, you're only helping the quality of it, but it's such a small percentage relative to the cardboard box that that's just fine. Well, again, since we're talking about corrugated cardboard boxes, I want to stress that we got to get the styrofoam, bubble wrap, packing peanuts out of the corrugated boxes before that goes in the recycling cart or brought to the Recycling Center Plus. It's those packaging materials that really present issues with contamination. Good question.
Got it. Are the bottles that have shrink wrapped plastic labels recyclable? I don't know if that means like pop bottles and things like that.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can you read it one more time?
Are bottles that have shrink wrapped plastic labels recyclable? Which would be pretty much any plastic bottle is shrink wrapped plastic, right?
That's if I'm interpreting that correctly, yes, that should be just fine. When you said shrink wrap, I was getting the image of like when you buy, a 24 pack of water bottles, in that flex plastic packaging, that would not be going in your curbside. But if you're just referring to the little plastic label on the, pop bottle or water bottle itself, that's just fine to leave on. You can leave that on when you recycle it.
Is it true that items labeled as decomposable, such as paper plates or even a banana peel, won't actually decompose in a landfill since there is not enough air circulation? So basically it goes to a landfill. Will it live there forever?
Well, so two things I want to talk about. First, it won't, because if you throw it in the garbage, it's going to go to the waste energy facility. And with like that banana peel in particular, organics that slowly break down over time in anaerobic environments of landfills create methane gas, which to the best of my recollection is about 20 times more potent of a greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide. So when you throw your banana peel in the garbage and it goes to the waste energy facility, it's not really, the banana peel is not desirable from an energy production standpoint. There's not a lot of BTU content in a banana peel, but it will burn up in the process. The other thing too, though, is yes, things do not break down quickly in a landfill. And at our waste energy facility in the entryway, we actually have a number of little kind of show and tell items for the students that come through. And we've got a newspaper that was put in the Orinoco landfill in like the date on the newspaper, I believe, is 1950. And I believe that was excavated or exhumed from the Orinoco landfill in like 1990. So it was in a landfill for several decades, and it was just as legible the day it was pulled out of the landfill as the day it went in. So yeah, things don't break down quickly in a landfill. But again, we have the waste energy facility, so we aren't stacking up mountains and mountains of trash. So good question.
Now you did answer this, but so this person might have asked it before that, but can berry or salad containers, clamshells be recycled? They fall in the plastics 1, 2, and 5, but I've heard before they can't be recycled. So again, you can put those into the curbside recycling, just not the self drop off.
Correct. Yep. Plastic produce containers, the salad, spinach containers, lettuce containers that are number ones. Yep. Those can be recycled in your curbside cart. Not desirable at this point at the recycling center plus.
What should we do with plastic shipping bags like Tyvek type, paper covered padded shipping bags, fabric? I guess that's a lot of questions all in one.
So I'm trying to picture that, but it's not really ringing any bells as being a desirable recyclable. So padded.
I had a similar question. Like I have a little pile here, like see-through plastic that wouldn't have a number on it or anything.
Throw that in the garbage. Yep. So with the padding, I'm thinking of like a manila, envelope that you might have like styrofoam or little bubble wrap infused into it.
Yeah, I think that was one of their other questions.
Yep. Throw that in the garbage. And some of these products that are a mix of different materials do create problems. Actually, that might be a good segue. I think I've got a photo on our Facebook page, and kind of transitioning a little bit to the meal prep kits that that people sometimes use. I'm just trying to find that on our Facebook page. I was going to share that. And it's a good example of how there's a clear disconnect between the packaging industry and the recycling industry. I don't know if I have that or not here. Anyways, it's basically a foam packaging, and it's marked with a number 1. And it says 100%, made from PET bottles, which PET bottles are recyclable, but that foam padding that's made from PET bottles is not recyclable.
Mm-hmm.
So,
You mentioned we should leave the plastic lid on the bottle for purposes of sorting, but is it problematic later on down the recycling channel if the lid is a different number than the bottle?
No, it is not. And this is a good example of sorting or processing technology catching up with different products. So years ago, the message used to be remove the cap because it was a different type of material. And on your standard bottle of pop, the bottle is going to be a number 1. The cap will likely be a number 5. And it'll make its way through the sorting process. It'll get baled up. And once it goes to its next line in the recycling process, a company that's going to process it, it's going to get shredded. And from there, those little shredded pieces are going to go into a bath of sorts with an auger at the bottom of it. And that auger at the bottom will move along the plastics that sink, and then they can skim off the plastics that float. And I can't remember, one of them sinks and one of them floats. I can't remember if number 1 sinks or number 1 floats, but that's how they end up separating the cap from the body of the bottle itself. Good question.
How best to dispose of styrofoam coolers, which are commonly used for frozen shipments?
In the garbage, unfortunately, at this point. We do get a lot of questions on styrofoam, mostly because people are confused because they see that resin identification symbol and they assume it's recyclable, and it's unfortunately not. There are no good markets really in the Midwest, and so I mean, technically, if you go out onto the West Coast, you might be able to find companies that recycle styrofoam and densify it and turn it into picture frames or light switch covers. But that's just not feasible in our part of the country. And from an environmental standpoint, it would not make sense to put styrofoam on a semi truck that's going to burn diesel fuel, drive it across the country and back. That would be so it's just, that's my long-winded way of saying throw it in the garbage.
Yeah, I have heard too that it's definitely not as cost effective as other materials to recycle, but can bread bags, produce bags, salad bags be recycled in the store like plastic shopping bags?
Oh, good question. I think they can. That would be one where I could look into that, but I believe the bread bags, the produce bags are acceptable. I remember each year the Recycling Association of Minnesota holds an annual conference, and I recall there were some representatives from the packaging industry, and I'm pretty certain that the bread bags, produce bags can go in with the standard grocery bags. I'm about 95% sure on that.
Okay. Someone did mention that Dart Container in Michigan recycles styrofoam, but it is one of the few in the country. And we have 3 questions. No, wait. Yeah, 3 questions left, and we'll try to wrap it up after that. So, can plastic bags such as milorganite, gypsum, or water softener salt? What about other plastic food containers with a 4? Where can these go?
Okay, good questions. So I can actually picture the milorganite bags. I don't use that on my lawn, but I've got a real good, my buddy Mike does, and he's got an awesome lawn. So I can picture that. To my knowledge, those would just be garbage. Once they're empty, if you've got an empty milorganite bag or a weed and feed bag, as long as it's empty, bag it up and throw it in the garbage. And then I'm sorry, there was a second question on there too.
Number 4, that has to go in the garbage, correct? Anything with the number 4?
Yes, I'm the only thing that gives me, I guess, pause to double think on that is if it's a number 4 plastic grocery bag. So you can often see plastic grocery bags as number 2s, which is high density polyethylene, or number 4, low density polyethylene. And this would be one where I'd want to speak to somebody in the industry on whether or not you can mix those in. I would err on the side of caution and say don't mix that in. If you were getting a number 4 bag, yeah, I would err on the side of caution at this point. I would say throw it in your garbage, and that's something that.
And this person said plastic food containers with a 4. So.
Oh yes, plastic food containers with a 4. Throw that in your garbage. Thank you for clarifying.
Cat litter. Someone asked about that.
Cat litter, throw that in the garbage. Bag it up, throw it in the garbage.
What should we do with cold packs that are sent in boxes of food or medical supplies like insulin to keep them cold?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Can
That
you,
would be one where I
can
would
you
want
empty out the
to.
material inside of it first? I don't know.
That would be one where I would want to double check and talk to somebody, either at Hazardous Waste or talk to the person directly to get a better idea. Maybe they could send us a picture, because I would like to look into that. Again, let me bring up or if you're taking notes, I don't know who asked that, but phone number 507-328-7070. Drop us a line on the Facebook, send us a message on the Facebook page, or just call the number or email pwservice@co.olmsted.mn.us.
Yeah, if you want to put your contact us
I should do that
up while
Yep.
we're finishing the last two questions.
Yep, let me do that. Thank you for the reminder.
Actually, I think there's just one left, and then we can see if anyone wants to ask them.
So if the person who asked that question is still listening, olmstedwaste.com is the website, 328-7070 for the phone number, and then pwservice@co.olmsted.mn.us. I'll leave that up here for a few seconds. So if they happen to be taking notes, they can either take a picture of it with their smartphone, or if they don't have that, just write it down on a scratch piece of paper.
So the last question I have is, which is preferred for recyclability, paper or plastic? And I'm assuming if they're talking about the grocery store, I'm going to go ahead and say paper all the way. It takes oil and a lot of other harmful toxic chemicals to go into making plastic. So my personal answer, and I'll obviously let you answer it, but would be to always go paper over plastic. That's just my 2 cents.
Again, I always kind of hesitate to try to be an authority on, what's going to be better on some of these options, because, I don't have a lifetime net environmental impact analysis comparing a one paper bag to one plastic bag. I have read some interesting articles on this, because the amount of resources required to make one single plastic bag, I believe, are less in some respects than that paper bag, because the paper bag is just considerably heavier. And I mean, everything from transportation, you can fit way more plastic bags on a truck, but I really shy away from that because I don't know, to be honest. So I would say if you really want to,
be eco-friendly, use cloth reusable bags.
Bring a reusable bag if you can. And I think some grocery stores were kind of putting a halt on that during the pandemic. I was actually at a local Hy-Vee about a few weeks back, and the person behind me in line brought their reusable bag. So I can't speak.
I've been doing it for months. They just won't bag it for you, but you can bag it yourself if you bring your own.
Yeah. But I mean, so I kind of do a little shuffle on that question, because there's a lot of variables with that, and that's about all I really feel comfortable saying.
Okay.
With that. So
someone added that I understand jumping worms have been found near the compost facility. Have they been found actually in the compost?
Well, first off, I'm surprised it took this long in the evening till we got a question on jumping worms, and the answer is no. We have not found or confirmed jumping worms in the finished compost. And we have found them on the periphery of the site in natural vegetation. I tell this to people: if I could push an easy button and, not have to talk about one thing, it would be jumping worms, because it's a fine line between being transparent and scaring people. So again, we have not found jumping worms or identified them in the finished compost. Last June, we had a worm expert from the University of Minnesota come down to our site. To my knowledge, we're one of the only entities, organizations really in the state that's being proactive on, being transparent on this. you can imagine if your business was selling potted plants or whatever, it would be not something you would really want to actively discuss or whatever. But that is a concern. Plant sales or people splitting hostas or things like that are ways that jumping worms spread. And just if this is the first time you're hearing about it, the jumping worms are just a different species of earthworm, right? So the earthworms that we commonly have always thought about as being beneficial to the soil profile and our gardens are European species of earthworms. These Asian jumping worms are original to like the Korean peninsula and Japan, and they've made their way to the United States through plant sales. To my knowledge, they've been in the South for a number of decades, so they've got nicknames like Alabama jumpers or snake worms, and they get that because if you agitate them, they move very rapidly and unpredictably and almost like a snake. And they're problematic because they do all of their work in the top, inch or so of the soil, and that can create erosion, and they reproduce very rapidly. So going back to our composting process, we know that our compost piles do get hot enough to kill jumping worm cocoons. And that's kind of the issue with jumping worms is they do not need a mate to reproduce. They die in the winter. The adults die in the winter, or in the late fall, and their cocoons can overwinter. They can withstand the cold temperatures in the Midwest, in Minnesota. So that's where the composting process we know gets hot enough to kill them. There's a researcher with the University of Wisconsin Arboretum that has done some really good scientific studies on earthworms. And what they have found that jumping worm cocoons exposed to temperatures of 100 degrees Fahrenheit for a period of up to, I think, 3 days. That's what's coming to my mind is hot enough to kill jumping worms, at least in a laboratory setting. Again, we know our compost piles are getting up to 160 degrees Fahrenheit. So well hot enough to kill jumping worm cocoons. And that's why, again, we mix the compost with those windrow turners to expose as much of the material to those high temperatures as possible, not only to kill jumping worms, but weed seeds and other undesirable materials. So it's kind of a tough question to answer because the compost site is open to the environment, so we can't guarantee. Same thing with like weed seeds would be carried by the wind and end up on the finished pile. We can't guarantee that it's free from all things that may be potentially harmful. But something I will say is we do test the compost annually. We do one test each year. And we've been doing that for well over 15 years. And we found that our compost to be a really good soil amendment, because we do get a lot of questions this time of year about potential residual pesticides. And based on the historic data, we don't have concerns about residual pesticides. But yeah, the jumping worms question, sometimes I get those phone calls and they'll last 25, 30 minutes, and they ultimately end up with, these are our operations to prevent the spread of jumping worms. We ask that residents be diligent before they bring yard waste to the compost site, and that's kind of the story on jumping worms. There's more we could probably talk about, but getting back to the initial question, no, we have not confirmed them in the finished compost. So,
okay. Just to remind everyone, we are recording this session. So if you think someone else could benefit from this information, we will be posting it to the EarthFest website in the next few days, as well as the EarthFest Facebook page. And also be sure to check out the EarthFest website for any other events coming up. We have several events next week. And again, the first outdoor farmers market, we will be having a booth there along with some live music. I think one last question that got added was button batteries, trash or hazard waste, and someone answered hazardous waste.
Yep, I would err on the side of caution there. And what I've been told is the material makeup of button batteries can be changing, but just be safe. Bring them to the hazardous waste facility. Yep. So yeah,
All
button
right.
batteries, you know, any other type of rechargeable batteries, bring them to the hazardous waste facility.
Okay, well, thank you everyone so much for attending. We really appreciate it. And have a good evening.
Yeah, thanks again for staying on. This was good, and I appreciate everyone for taking the time to I guess get to know a little bit more about our solid waste operations in Olmsted County. I'll hang out for a few more minutes too if anyone has any other questions. So
Great, thanks, Anthony.